Greetings companies, exporters, trade and business experts. Welcome to all of you to today's webinar, part of our Survive and Thrive webinar series with the SBDC. We're delighted you could join us all today to talk about international online marketing for your businesses. We really appreciate that you've taken all the time to join us and have a look at some of the things that we can do to mitigate the challenges and get some potential responses to the new business environment that we're all seeing unfolding around us. So just while the last of the registrants are logging on, I will just perhaps start off by introducing ourselves. So my name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. Well, my background is actually in finance, but I've been really just drawn to the wonders of great online content and the impact it can have on websites, on marketing, on SEO, keywords, everything like that. I am really grateful to my colleague Samantha Sofici, who kindly agreed to join me today and help me out. Samantha is a very experienced and valued business development manager, and with endless good cheer helps companies navigate the online world, and with a lot of experience and expertise, particularly in marketing. So I'm very glad that she could join me today to help out, talk about online marketing. And we're really, really delighted to have Caroline Turner join us. Caroline is the International Trade Specialist for the Alabama International Trade Center. And she focuses on really just helping small and mid-sized companies in Alabama with international trade. Everything they could possibly think of, from regulations and contracts to finance and risk mitigation, everything. So, get your questions into Caroline about anything regarding the international side as well. Very importantly, Caroline does also country and market analysis for international market research and international business training. So a real treat to have Caroline with us today. So now a quick word just on who we are and who we are as a company. We're a private company. IBT Online. IBT stands for International Business and Technologies Online, with US headquarters, although I'm actually sitting in the UK office where we have a lot of our marketing team. And we are 100% focused on building and hosting and managing online tools for our clients to help them grow their businesses internationally. I guess perhaps our key defining characteristic really is that we work, think, and act globally and online, and have done that since our creation in 2002. So today we're as part of our Survive and Thrive webinar series. We had one already on website localization, so I'm not going to go through that again, but we are just going to talk a little bit about why exporters need international online marketing. Then some of the essentials that you have to have for international marketing in particular. Then some examples of how exporters and how international businesses use online international marketing in particular. And then we're going to do a little, we don't want to leave this in a negative way. We're preparing for the rebound. And there's also some tips about some helping hands for small mid-sized enterprises. And we have left some time at the end for Q&A. Please do put your questions into the chat box. We'll be curating questions throughout, and we would love to get to your questions at the end. But we're going to start the webinar with a few words from Caroline on the SBDC and the resources that the SBDC has for you at the moment and at your disposal. So Caroline, please talk us through this.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. As Susanna said, I'm Carolyn Turner. I'm with the Alabama International Trade Center, and we, along with other members of the SBDCs in various states, have partnered with IBT Online to host these webinars. Given the current state of the economy and the world in general, we are hoping to help small businesses across the country expand their reach globally. Making use of social media and online marketing is just as important internationally as it is here in the United States, and a lot of small businesses might not realize that. The SBDCs are here to assist with that. And for those of you that don't know, the SBDCs are the Small Business Development Centers, are the most comprehensive small business assistance network in the United States. We're often hosted at universities and colleges in various states, as well as partnering with state economic development agencies and private partners. We are funded in part through a partnership with the U.S. Small Business Administration. So while we are not the SBA, we are one of their main partners. You can locate your nearest SBDC center at the link listed here, and this presentation will be shared with you after the webinar is over. And you can sign up in order to receive free and virtual counseling on any of your business needs. I also want to mention that the SBDCs have put together this resource page specifically related to COVID-19 with helpful guides and webinars on accessing our array of programs dedicated specifically to the firms that have been impacted. So this partnership that we have with IBT Online, we're working through this as part of the International Trade Interest section. This particular series of webinars was organized by the International Trade Interest section of the SBDC. We are a group of counselors across the country at various SBDCs that have expertise in international business topics related to trade finance, supply chain management, and marketing. We often provide free counseling, research, networking, and connections. And we assist both exporters and importers. That can be fairly rare when it comes to assistance for international business. Most assistance is available only on the exporter perspective, but SBDCs can also work with importers. We work with established firms as well as startups and new to export companies as well as existing exporters. We also work very closely with our federal and state trade partners, such as the U.S. Commercial Service, the Small Business Administration, the EXIM Bank, as well as SIDO that partnered with us on these webinars. The interest section is co-chaired right now by Jim Foley with the Illinois SBDC and Aaron Miller with the Virginia SBDC. I also want to point out that if you're interested in pursuing any of these global online marketing or e-commerce options, your state may have some grant funding to help cover those costs via the STEP grant, which is the State Trade Expansion Program, which is a partnership with the SBA, as well as SBA's Export Express Loan Program that can be used for these types of expenses. So please check with your local state economic development agency and check and see whether your state supports the STEP program, because there is funding available to cover some of these costs. I also want to mention that due to COVID-19, SBA has made some changes to their loan programs. The SBA 7A loans issued before September 27th of this year qualify for debt relief, and the SBA could potentially cover 6 months of payments. So now I would like to pass it on over to IBT Online to begin today's discussion of online marketing.
Thanks very much, Caroline. That's great. And as you can see, you know, a big helping hand from the SBDC. Do take advantage of these things. So let's dive right in. The first question, why do we need online international marketing? Why do exporters need this? And I guess I'd like to start just with a very quick overview of some big stats. Now, some of you who attended the first webinar on websites already have seen this, but I just wanted to reiterate, I'll go through it quite quickly. And as Caroline said, you will get a recording of this in your inboxes. So as of January, or actually December 2019, 4.5 billion people out of, 7.5 billion in the world, so 60% of the world was online. And when we talk about online, we don't just mean a little bit, we mean 6.5 hours, 6 hours and 43 minutes actually, average time spent online every day. Now I'm looking, and some of the big organizations like Hootsuite have just published some numbers actually today about what they can see of online penetration rate since COVID-19. It has gone up significantly. Even from these huge numbers, it has moved up. One thing that's moved up in particular is the amount of time spent. Now, you know, this is actually good news for a small mid-cap company. It means you know where your customers are. You know where your prospects are. They're online. And what are they doing? Well, one of the big things they're doing is communicating. One of the major things they're doing. We said 4.5 billion people, 3.8 billion are on social media. So nearly 50% of the population is on social media on that. And this is actually quite fast growing still. It is growing at nearly 10%. And again, the numbers indicating from the first 3 months of this year, or up until April of this year, the first quarter really, showing a very, very strong growth in these numbers, particularly in social media across the world, across, just globally, just everywhere. And I wanted to show this graph as well. It's a bit hard to find where the United States is, but you're there too. So the white graph there, the white one on the bottom, 49% is the worldwide average of social media penetration. What's really interesting, if you look at the USA at 70%, is nowhere near the top. It's around sort of the first third. Countries like South Korea, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Argentina, Thailand, Sweden, Saudi Arabia, all have way higher social media penetration rates, led in the world by countries like, the UAE at sort of 99%, sort of, a very small place, but still, one of the most plugged in countries in the world. So this chart just shows you, I just really wanted to show you, it really is a very global phenomenon, this social media penetration. And again, as an SME, you can say, well, that's good news. I know everybody's online, and I know how I can reach them because they're all communicating. Now, this is just a chart or some graphs to show you, a visual to show you sort of, what kind of behavior people are doing online. 97%, 100% are active online at least once a month, and more likely daily. If you look at the top engaged markets, those ones sort of at certainly 50% and more above social media penetration rates, there's these averages go really high up. In places like sort of the Philippines, which is one of the most plugged in countries anywhere in the world, you're looking at sort of more like 5 hours a day on social media, things like that. So these are very, very big numbers, and they're fast, and they're continuing to grow numbers. One of the things I think that's really important to emphasize about anything that's online, social media, websites, online marketing, is that it is customer-centric. It is searcher-centric. And that means that you as a company need to think, first of all, about your customer, about your client, and how they are accessing it, and what is relevant for them. So it's no good you sort of sticking your hand up as a company and saying, we've got a great product, if you're not doing it in the way that your customer wants to see it. And that applies to websites, it applies to social media and everything. And the best, and apologies again, the next slide comes from my previous webinar, but I thought it important enough to reiterate it. This whole customer-centric is really also reflected and reinforced by the way search engines are organized. Search engines are fundamentally localized. In other words, they are customer-centric. So if you take Google as the world's leading search engine, it's got about a 70% world market share in search engines, but it applies equally to Baidu, Yandex, Naver, Yahoo, any other search engine. Don't think of them as one homogeneous, big sort of filtering algorithm. More likely, try to think of them as discrete units. So, Google Argentina is not the same as Google in Mexico. Put it this way: if I'm in Germany and if you're targeting the German market, your German prospect is going to go to google.de. That's Google in Germany. He's going to search in German. And Google is going to give him the responses, going to rank the responses on page 1 and so on, according to what Google deems is valid and relevant and important for that German searcher. And if your website and if your online marketing is not localized for that German searcher, you're not going to reach your German prospective buyer. So that's what we talk about when we talk about localization. That's what I mean by it. That's what we mean by it. It applies to websites and it applies to everything online, including online marketing. So that's sort of, you know, the first, I guess, our first takeaway. The first takeaway: why do exporters need international online marketing? You need it for two reasons. One, or really for three. One, because the world is online. And two, you need it in an online, a localized version of it, so that you can reach and communicate with your prospects. And I guess the third reason is a new one in a way, or it's certainly been made relevant to all of us right now. You need it to prepare for the rebound. I don't know what shape that rebound is going to take. I don't know how it's going to be, but we have a strong conviction that it will involve online business development tools for companies to survive. So there you go. With that, I think what I'm going to do actually now, before we jump on to our next one, I'm going to launch a little poll just to make sure that we're all in this together. I'm going to launch a poll, and I want you all to take your mouses, and click on the markets that interest you most at the moment. What are your top target markets? I'm sorry, I only had 5 possibilities. I couldn't list all the other ones. I mean, obviously, you know, Africa isn't, you know, it's just India, just put it in other, but at least you can tick on Latin America, Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and then a huge other. I only had the possibility of 5. Just to give you some feedback, a very strong dominance for Latin America and Europe, and quite a lot for Asia Pacific as well, which is great to see. Thank you very much for responding and responding quite so vigorously. You got a great response right there. Thank you. Right, let's now talk a little bit about some of the essentials for online international marketing. Some of you who are experts in marketing are going to find this part like, oh, too basic, but I think it's important to just list what are the essentials in online marketing and how do they differentiate when you're looking at an international perspective. So basically, there are 2 tools in the online world for a company. There's a website and there's online marketing. Your website can be big, small, it can be a business to business, it can be e-commerce enabled, whatever, but it's basically a website. And then you drive out from that. Online marketing has all kinds of different parts to it. But it's basically about using and engaging with a search engine and engaging with social media marketing. So we talk about SMM and SEM, for example. So, but basically those are the 2 big tools that you use for your online business development. Those 2 tools, and you had to articulate between the 2. Now, I wanted to try and, Samantha and I struggled a little bit with this, but I think Samantha's done a great job. We wanted to try and sort of put a visual in here, which would allow you to think about how you do online marketing and what are the first things you need to do. One of the first things you need to do is to figure out your end goal. So if you start communicating with clients and prospects, what do you want them to do with that communication? For example, let's say you want to increase your brand awareness in a market. That's your goal. Increase brand awareness in your market. So you start communicating on a social media platform, posting blogs, white papers, whatever. What does the reader do after reading your blog or your white paper? What is your call to action? Where does your reader go? In the past, you would have invited that prospect or client to come to a meeting at the office, or a tour around your factory or your showroom, or meet at a trade show. What we want you to do is start thinking of your website and your international marketing as your digital real estate. So your US domestic market website can have its own communication policy surrounding it. You've got your US main website, and then you could have, you know, search engine optimization, you could have social media campaigns all running around it, feeding it. and bouncing off it, using it as a springboard with an interaction between your website, social media, websites, SEO, search engine optimization. Now, but let's say you also want to target the French market. In that sense, what we would say is the French market then it requires its own environment, its own online real estate. It requires its own French localized website in order to act as a springboard for the French social media and the French search engine optimization. Same thing for Brazil. It can all feed back in a sort of triangle circle thing back into your US website. But otherwise, if you're going to launch social media campaigns in Brazil, your Brazil audience needs a place to land. And that landing place is one of the first essential steps. And that landing place is a localized website in Brazil. So as a takeaway, make sure you have a localized website first, then your online market. Put the other way around. Don't start an online marketing campaign before you get all your ducks lined up. The website has to act as a springboard, like the sort of the real estate for that area. So you have clear goals and clear objectives. You map your buyer journey, all those metrics, all those other essentials, which we will also be talking about. But step number one is make sure that you know where your clients are going, your prospects are going once you start those campaigns. So step one, localized website. Localized website is not just about sort of, a mirror. It's not just a translation of your US website. It has to be localized. That gets back to that notion of customer-centric. So it's not just translation. There's a lot of things that go into that website to make it a localized user experience. Okay. And again, that was our first webinar. So I'm not going to talk anymore about localized websites. I'm just going to leave this image with you. It's about getting found and being understood, which means that you have to have, all those things. If you're targeting Mexico, then you have the Mexican website, which has a .mx, not a .com. It's in Mexican Spanish. All those things that make your company be found and understood locally. This all eventually builds up the trust that you need for that buyer's journey. But before we talk about a buyer's journey, let's define a buyer persona. Samantha, why don't you define a buyer persona for me, please?
Yes, thank you, Susanna. So as HubSpot defines it, a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. So defining a buyer persona is really important. It allows you to make sure that you're always reaching the right person at the right time with the right message, saving both yourself and your business a ton of time and resources. So when you think about your own buyer persona and who they would be, you can start by thinking about the list that you see on. So what languages do they speak? Where do they live? How much money do they spend? And you can figure it out by first getting together with your sales team and thinking about what existing customers are. Someone who does a really, really good job of this is Zipcar. So in their mission statement even includes who their main target market is or who their buyer persona would be. They are someone that's urban, educated, tech savvy, and environmentally conscious. And you can see that by their Instagram posts. Their Instagram post says it all. It's it looks like a young couple with a plant, so obviously they love the environment. It looks like they're on one of the zip cars. If you look behind it, it looks like an urban environment. It doesn't look like they're in the middle of a farm. So their Instagram outreach is just so demonstrative of who their buyer personas are. So that's a great demonstration. Another company that does this really well is L'Oreal. And what's important to note about buyer personas is that your international buyer persona can differ from your domestic buyer persona, especially in times like these socially distant COVID times. So on the slide, there's a few questions that you should ask yourself. So are there multiple buyer personas for my export markets? How do they find me? What do they care about? L'Oreal is a frequently cited company for how spot on they are with their international marketing. And if you look at the picture on the right, in the text, it says L'Oreal is assuring their US stylists that they're trying to support them while we are socially distancing ourselves. And the majority of stylists are closed. So that's what L'Oreal viewed as an important message for their buyer persona in the US. In Australia, though, the message is totally different. If you look at their Australia site, there is no mention of COVID-19, but instead there's a focus on the climate. That is probably most likely due to the horrible fires Australia suffered just a few months ago, and that is what matters to them right now. And then in the last example, L'Oreal is demonstrating to their Brazilian customers that they're doing their part to help the people of Brazil by producing hand sanitizer. So they're not speaking to the stylists, they're not speaking about the environment, but they're speaking to the people of Brazil and how they're doing their part to help. So see by these examples, each buyer persona is clearly different and their messaging is respectful of that.
Terrific. That was a great roundup in just in the shortest time, full of impact about what is a buyer persona, and particularly the importance of identifying your international buyer persona, which could be well different from your domestic, the one you have normally in your sales rota. So lesson number one was get a website which deals with this, a localized website for your international market. Lesson number two, know your buyer persona. Let's now talk again a bit about search engine optimization. Again, this is something that a lot of you already do in your domestic market. Just for a quick reminder about what is organic search in particular. Organic search is the sort of the holy grail of it. It's what you seek. Organic search is unpaid, basically. It's free. Well, it's free, except it takes a lot of work to get there. So organic search is when you appear on the first page, and certainly the top one's best, of say a Google, when you click in, when a searcher puts in the right keywords. So your searcher puts in the keywords and your company appears at the top of the Google list. That is successful organic search. Our point is that in the international world, the search engine optimization, which you've done diligently and worked hard for in your domestic market, it's going to be different in each market. You can still base it on those keywords, the backlinks, everything else that you've done in your domestic market, but you're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to look at it again. You're going to have to reevaluate the keywords, make sure the backlinks are working, get the domain authority, get the relevance correct for that market, and you're going to have to do it regularly, an ongoing process. So organic search, yes, it's the holy grail in all markets that you're looking for internationally as well, but it will be different in each market. Here's a little tiny example of what I mean by different. Now, your keyword that you searched for and really identified and got spot on for your domestic market might not be the same in an international market. And it might not be even the same across different international markets. Here's an example of, these are both Portuguese markets, Brazil and Portugal, but they have very different keywords for this example here of train. And if you're in Brazil and you're using the Portuguese or the Portuguese word comboio, 5% of people who go on the internet will use that as a keyword for you. It's only 5%. 95% of people looking for anything to do with the train will use the Brazilian Portuguese word trem. So you can have the same search engine, Google, in both cases. You can have literally the same language, Portuguese, different keywords, different Google ad campaigns because of it. Okay, so that's an example of how you would have to change your strategies a little bit, modify it, make sure that you're hitting the right, that you're really on trend, on track for your international market, each market being different. When we talk about search engine optimization as well, we talked about that organic being free. It is not free. It takes a lot of expertise. It takes a lot of knowledge and time and yeah, grit. You know, you really have to know how to get good optimization. You really have to have a lot of expertise with the search engines to make sure that you're hitting it correctly. But it is as I said, the holy grail, as it were, is the long-term source of traffic, authority, and relevance. You're establishing yourself as the key authority on that topic, and that's what you want to be. And you can do that in all markets, but they'll be a bit different. Paid search engine marketing is, as it says on the tin, paid. So instead of the organic one, you're actually paying. You've got you pay Google to say, right, I'm going to go ahead of everybody who get that organic. Well, I'm going ahead of them. And Google says, okay, I'll let you do that, but I'm going to put a little sticker next to it saying that this is an advertisement. So people who use the web a lot, and people like me, for example, if I see ad on it, I'm like, oh no, they're not the genuine authority. They're paying to get that. But it is a really useful tool, sorry, when you're looking at for a short-term burst. You know, when you're launching a new product, when you're just ahead of a trade show, when you're going on a mission, when you're whatever it is, when you really need to boost things and boost your awareness and your presence in that target market, it's really a good idea to make sure. But one careful thing, if you're going to go on the paid, make sure that you've got the right keywords, because Google will rack up a little charge every time someone clicks on that word. And if you haven't got the keyword right, then you're paying Google for nothing. So make sure you've got the right keywords for the right markets, because they're different everywhere. A combination of organic and paid is how most marketeers, and certainly we would look at designing things for international strategies. They work well together. Paid is a great way to get you started in a country, or as I said, launching a new product. Organic is what you build up to over time, and it does take time. We certainly, certainly we're not getting results before 3 months. In 6 months, we say, okay, at 6 months we can get results. And 9 months, we've definitely got results. 12 months, we are top of the page. But that's how long it takes. At least when, I don't see any shortcuts on it. In our experience, that's how long it takes. Certainly, we don't get any good results. We're not on top of the page, even with really good SEO, with organic within the first 3 months. So that little paid gives you that extra boost. A final essential that I wanted to mention just in this part, which is this, the essentials of international marketing. Just like your domestic marketing, you need to measure each aspect of what you do. And that means basically defining your goals, choosing the right metric, and analyzing them. So if you want to measure your outcome, it means you have to define and set the objectives, basically. And those objectives have to be realistic goals. For your international market, this can be especially important because you're building up brand recognition and that trust that we talked about that's so needed in that buyer's journey. Before you start designing your marketing strategy, you need to think about your goals. This will then inform, that basically decides your metrics. It's important, which metrics are important for you to realize whether you've achieved your goal or not. So once that's set up, don't forget to keep an eye on them. What's it called? Lather, rinse, repeat. Do this a lot. Especially during times of social distancing like we're having a lot now. Habits are changing fast. You need to make sure that you're on track and are learning from the metrics a lot, especially in the international markets. Right, now let's talk a little bit how about exporters use online international marketing. And I'm going to turn back to Samantha for this one. Samantha?
Excellent. Thanks, Susanna. So for international online marketing, it's really important to understand the specific countries you are marketing to because each country interacts with social media a bit differently. Luckily, there's a ton of resources online like Hootsuite, We Are Social, HubSpot, and on our website, ibt.onl, we have a ton of free information like the infographics and the studies that you're going to see on these slides, which are a great place to start to understand these markets. I'm just going to review 4 of the top export markets for the US, starting with Mexico. So Mexico is our #1 export market, and social media is a great place to start if you're looking to build brand awareness in Mexico. It's actually ranked 7th in the world for the amount of time spent on social media, right behind another Latin American country, Argentina. They spend 3.2 hours per day on social media, and that figure, I bet, is a little outdated considering how much we're online nowadays. So they probably spend even more time than they did before. The next market is Canada. So one thing that is key to remember, as we mentioned previously for Canada, is that each market needs its dedicated strategy as their buyer personas are likely to be different and have different needs. So look to the right, there's one example of how one of our clients successfully moved into Canada. And for Canada, website localization is key, even though they speak English as well. As Susanna mentioned, the terms even within the same language can differ. So you need to make sure that you are using the right words for your buyer personas in the Canadian market. The next slide is about China, which, China is an important market for a ton of exporters. And in terms of online presence, it can be an especially tricky one. We will dive a little bit deeper into China in a second. Susanna is a bit of an expert on it, but it's important to note that the sheer volume of people that are online communicating and especially watching videos, I think 229 million people in China viewing videos is a pretty impressive number. Then the last market that I'll give you a quick view into is Japan. Japan is an interesting example in that there's an obvious difference in audience from Facebook, which is a mature audience, to Instagram and Twitter, which is for an audience less than 30 years old. This would be key information if one of your buyer personas in the market is a college student versus someone who's a business professional. That's really important information to know when targeting specific people in Japan. Now we're going to take a quick look into the specific social media platforms. So not only do you have to understand the country that you're marketing to, but also the platform. Facebook is an obvious first choice for marketers both domestically and internationally. Facebook is available in 101 languages, and people spend an average of 35 minutes a day on the platform. So it's an obvious choice for a lot of people who own businesses. 4.37 billion combined audience between Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger is not a number that you should turn away from. So Facebook is definitely something that you should consider when marketing internationally if it fits your buyer persona. Next is YouTube. YouTube is another huge social media platform that marketers absolutely need to use. Regardless of whether you're B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. Because something that a lot of people don't realize is how easy and important it is to use videos for your business, both domestically and internationally. I mean, look at those stats. Second most visited website globally, second largest search engine globally, 80% of users are outside of the US, and yet only 9% of small businesses use it. So something that I really want you guys to take away from this slide and just from this presentation in general is that you should definitely be on YouTube, because nowadays with iPhones, you don't need a huge production budget to make an impactful video. And then once you have the video and you're happy with it, you can just translate it, put some subtitles on the bottom, and boom, you can reach an even larger audience. It's super easy to use, and it's very, very effective. So please use YouTube. The next platform is LinkedIn. As many of you guys know, as business professionals, LinkedIn is important for professionals to connect throughout the US, but please don't discount it for international marketing as well. The larger user base behind the US is India, China, Brazil, the UK, and France, and it's 3 times more effective than Facebook and Twitter for lead generation. So remember that even if you are working for a company you're still speaking to people on the other side, not just a business. So make sure to use LinkedIn to really get to know your customers and communicate with them. Then the last platform that we're going to review is Instagram. And you might be wondering if Instagram is the right platform for your business, and the answer is probably yes. Instagram is a great choice for businesses in today's world because it lets you interact with potential clients. And what's really important to know about Instagram is that over 80% of the Instagram users are following at least one business account. And Instagram has the highest engagement rate out of all the social media platforms with 95 million posts and 4.2 billion likes a day. And Instagram users are active. It's known to be very addictive, spending about 53 minutes a day on the app. I mean, I know for myself at least, I know I'm a millennial. I'm always on my phone, whatever. I put a limit on my Instagram use to 15 to 20 minutes a day, and that's when my phone cuts me off. So I can definitely speak for that. But Instagram is not only a really great platform to create brand awareness or engagement, but with the right posts and ads, it can also increase your purchases. 48% of all Instagram users said that they made a purchase because of a brand's video that they watched on the platform. So that's key. But on Instagram, it's really important to know what sort of posts you should be making on the different features. So for the feed, it's going to look different from the story, and the story is going to look different from the Instagram TV. And that can definitely differ not only on the post, but also on your audience. So it's really important to keep that in mind when posting on Instagram. And now I'm going to hand it back to Susanna to talk a little bit more about China.
Thanks, Samantha. Just a quick word, because I think, Samantha laid out some of the big global players there. I think some of Facebook, for example, its single largest market is India. So these are real global players. China has its own environment. It's very much its own environment. And if you're interested in the China market, then you need to deal with the China environment. And we have a whole webinar just on China. But I think it's worth just highlighting the key major players. Around 30% of mobile internet time in China in total is spent on WeChat. WeChat penetration rate is like 80%. So they spend, I said, a third of their time on WeChat. It's a very, if you don't know WeChat well, it is a really amazing app. It's a social media. It's launched by Tencent and only in like 2013, I think. It's basically a messaging app, but it has so many other functions. Messaging, PayPal, Facebook, Uber, Amazon, Spotify, all wrapped in one. So people use it for everything. To pay rent, find a parking space, make investments, find a date, and of course to buy and sell things. The couple of the other ones, Weibo, I wanted to mention as well. Weibo is very important especially for international businesses, because it's one of the ones people compare it to Twitter. It's not really compared to Twitter because you can buy ad space on it too, which is interesting. Videos are really important, and of course YouTube is banned in China, so you've got to have the China-centric platforms. One of the easier ones would be YouTube, but there are lots of other video platforms, Bilibili or Douyin, but YouTube is probably the one that most businesses would go to for that. So the China environment is different. But I think one of the fastest and most cost-efficient ways of building brand awareness in China, particularly for B2B companies, is through the social media. And I would probably start with Weibo, with Sina Weibo. for that. As I said, we've got a whole other blog just on China. So I wanted now to talk also about some case studies and just share a couple of examples with you. We talked a bit about buyer personas. I wanted to give you an example of that. This is just an example. For example, we are working for a company, and one of their buyer personas are teachers. Now, Easter in Germany is really important, much more important than it is in the States. It's not just about finding Easter eggs and things like that. It's a 4-day holiday. Everybody decorates eggs, and you have put them on trees and all kinds of things. So it's a very important holiday. So we thought it would be a good idea to have a little blog aimed at German primary school teachers. The objective, and again, the point that I want to make with this slide is that it is specific to the German market. We have identified the buyer persona. You have a clear objective for your campaign, and you have a clear method of doing it. So those are those 3 ingredients that we talked about earlier when you're talking about international essentials. Now, on the next slide, I wanted to show you some examples of the differences between markets. And this is the results, as it were, of a campaign. So it's the same company, very similar campaign. Some of the language is slightly altered. We ran the campaign in Mexico and in the UK for this company. And Mexico is a very engaged market. So same campaign, we got, 372,000 people were reached by that campaign. And in the UK, 9,500. It's good. For the UK, that's actually really good. Out in Mexico, we had like nearly 20,000 post clicks, feedbacks and so on. Major engagement, 20,500 engagement. We had people going, love it, like it, oh my goodness, wow. We had lots of shares in there. We had like 230 shares, 36 comments. Wow, really engaged. And in England, we had 1 comment, 3 shares, and 1,200 engagement. We were actually really happy with that UK one as well. So, but looking at that, that's very different reaction to the same campaign in those 2 markets. When it comes down to it, that the other option to look at is, the engagement. In this case, is the blue and the red, total sessions and total users. So this slide basically shows you the previous information in bar charts. Total sessions and total users over time, over 1 year for the same client, Mexico, and on the bottom, the UK. What I want to really highlight to you is the yellow and the green bar charts, because that's the actual conversion. That's actually what you want. The rest is vanity. So it's great that the Mexicans are all engaging in this and sharing it and tweeting it around. It has then a different emphasis. It's going to get your brand awareness much better. But the level of engagement, in other words, who are actually buying it, the level of conversion, who's actually buying the product, is exactly the same, pretty well, bar a couple, on the UK side. So the UK and the Mexican had the same result in terms of the bottom line for the company, but a very different reaction in the market and a different engagement level in the market. So where are we going now in terms of our online marketing best practices? Couple of things we've talked about. We've talked about having a localized website to act as your local springboard. I'll call it a springboard, or sort of an online real estate. We've talked about knowing your buyer persona and knowing their journey, that it's going to be a different journey and a different buyer persona, very well from, could very well be from your domestic one. Choose which platforms are worth your resources. Resources are always scarce. They're particularly scarce at the moment. So choose which platforms. Make sure you know which platform in which market. Is it going to be, for that buyer persona. Is it going to be Facebook, or is it going to be LinkedIn, or is it going to be Youku, or is it going to be Weibo? Set your goals, set your strategy, look at them, revise them, analyze them, dig down into the data. Answer any comments and mentions. We'll get back to this later. And then look and analyze and keep learning. My advice overall, particularly at this time, fewer, bigger, better is still the simplest path to success when it comes to social platform portfolios. So trying to manage lots of different presences on multiple platforms is going to be stretching resources for all companies at the moment. And you'll quickly reach diminishing returns, especially if you're not creating unique content for each platform. So choose your platform, concentrate your resources, and work steadily in your target markets. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the rebound, and I will go through this quickly because I've noted that there's a lot of questions, but please keep the questions coming in. Preparing for the rebound. Right, I wanted to share this graph with you. I did so as well in the other webinar, but I think it's worthwhile here because some of you might not have seen it. It's from a client of ours, but I think it's in the aviation center. It's one of the lead indicators or drivers that this client is following, is passenger numbers, because in the aviation sector. So they're looking at what's going on in China to see if they can start to discern the shape of a recovery. Who knows what that shape will be? W, seesaw, straight up, who knows? But every company needs to find its lead indicator or driver to know where and when and how that rebound is going to happen, to make sure that you're nimble and prepared for it. So what they're saying on this, by the way, in terms of the chart, is that the collapse in passenger numbers was sharper than anything they had seen before, sharper than SARS, sharper than 9/11, and that the upturn is sharper too. The upturn so far in China has been stronger and more vertical, steeper, more robust than anything they saw after SARS or after 9/11. Partly this has been fueled in the aviation sector by private jets and also by cargo. Well, it's not reflected in the passenger numbers, but there is definitely some good news coming out of there. I think that the point as well is just trying to make sure that you have a lead indicator that you're following to make sure you're prepared for that rebound. And how can you prepare for that rebound? Well, for us, it's making sure that you have good online tools. One of the things that's happened is that your trade shows have all been canceled. So what do you do now? If you're on online marketing, you need to start focusing on your email campaigns. You need to lean into your existing relationships. Make sure your website's homepage says, yes, I'm open for business. And here's how to contact us, and so on. Use your online presence in all ways. Focus it on your existing clients and on your top prospects, and lean in and be very close to them. Leverage any social media as well. Those are our key takeaways also about some of your objectives. And when we're looking at objectives, again, this is sort of a chart that you would see typically from a marketeer looking at objectives and saying, okay, here, let's say you're taking Facebook. And you're designing a marketing strategy, you have to be aligned with the overall business strategy. So if we take social media here as an example, you see with a single platform, Facebook in this case, you can tailor your activities to the goals and overall objectives of your business. In the current times, which are so uncertain, it makes sense to keep really close to your clients and your new prospects. Also to reassure any existing partnerships you may have, like distributors. In the example above, you'd want to privilege, improving customer retention, keeping your clients close. Spending time and resources on new lead generation is probably just not the right thing to do right now. Just focus on existing clients and making sure that they are close to you and that you're close to them too. And that brings us back to one of the other key things that we always say. It's really important to interact on social media and online marketing. It's not good enough to put something out there and then let it have its own life. You animate it. So you need to maintain a dialogue with that comment, with those mentions, to maintain a relationship. So with all that, we've run through a lot. We're going to give a very quick sort of overview on some help that we have for SMEs. Maybe Samantha, maybe you can go through this quickly.
Yeah, I would love to. So IBT Online, we provide two services. The first one is website localization, and the second is online marketing. And this is just to tell you that we have programs with a few different states. And as it was mentioned earlier, there are some STEP grants available to use towards website localization and international online marketing. So if that's something that you're interested in, we would be happy to help you. This first one is a two market expansion. So you'll receive 2 best practice localized websites in your top 2 target markets. So in this example, one in German for Germany and the other one in French for France. And as I mentioned before, depending on where you are, there are grants available to use towards the program. And then the next piece is online marketing. So if you need help in this area and our free resources just aren't enough, or you want a deeper dive, or you just want professionals to do it, we have a dedicated technical team that would be able to help you grow internationally through search engine marketing, social media marketing, and reporting and analytics. And that's another service that we offer. So then just taking a look at some other helpful resources. One way to figure out if there is funding in your specific state is if you go to that website that you see below, the www.cytoamerica.org/state trade directory. And if you click on your state, it will take you to whoever is your local economic development agency. And it definitely varies from state to state. Some states provide support for website localization, others provide support for things like trade shows, but those funds have been obviously are being used for other things right now. But that's a great place to start. And then these other logos that you see on the side, there are just so many organizations that are just willing and able and just really, really want to help. So XM Bank is a phenomenal resource. The SBDC, as you guys know, Carolyn spoke earlier about what they're doing to help during this crisis. Another phenomenal resource is the U.S. Commercial Services. They provide a lot of free consulting. The SBA, CITO. So please take a look at these organizations, because all they want to do is help companies succeed in this time. And then, so our third piece and our last part of this webinar series, the Survive and Thrive webinar series, is going to be next Thursday, April 30th at 3 o'clock. And it's going to be all about e-commerce for your international. So we're going to be talking about specific platforms, just e-commerce tendencies of different countries in the world. So it's going to take a deeper dive into that piece. So if you're interested, please register, even if you can't attend, because we will be sending the recording to your inbox anyways, if you register. And then this last piece, just as we said in the first webinar, and it's just as important right now, look after yourself, look after your loved ones, and look after your communities. The SBDC and IBT Online, CITO, we are all here to help you guys. So if you have any questions or if there's anything we can do, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Samantha. There's really a big wealth of questions. We've slightly overstepping our time, so I'm going to try and condense some of those questions, but we will get back to you individually for all the questions you've posted. Some of them are about localized websites, some of them are about different platforms. We will get back to you individually with answers on that. Some of the major questions that we wanted to talk about now, however, first of all, where do I get information on STEP grants? That's coming from several places. I don't know, Caroline, perhaps you want to address that quickly? So, or Samantha, Caroline?
Sure. So the website that you guys listed before, the CITO website, that's a great resource. Otherwise, check with your local SBDC or your Chamber of Commerce. Most of the time, they will know who in your state manages your STEP grant. In some states, it's partnered with the SBDC. In other states, it's handled by a governor's international trade office or a local economic development agency, and it can be handled differently in each state. Some states don't even have the STEP grant at all, but they often have other grants that are available for these kinds of expenses. So there should be some funding available pretty much no matter where you are.
Great to know. I'm afraid we've rather run out of time. I apologize, but as I said, we will get back to you about each individual question. And please know that if you're interested in listening, a recording will be sent to your inbox on Monday. So please do also check your junk folder. Sometimes it goes in there. Thank you again for joining. And if we can be of any help, please reach out to us. And we look forward to seeing you all on our next webinar on e-commerce, this time next week, to survive and thrive. Thank you all for attending. Thank you very much, Caroline, for helping to organize, and Samantha for doing a great job on presenting as well. Thank you, and stay safe, everybody. Stay well. Happy exporting. Thank you. Bye-bye.